Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I recap pay-per-views that I've seen in the WWE Network. As I said in my previous video, thought it'd only be fitting to review the 2009 Extreme Rules pay-per-view event. On the inaugural Extreme Rules pay-per-view event, of course, WWE does not count the ones from 07, 08, the One Night Stand pay-per-views. Only the Extreme pay-per-views, the Extreme Rules pay-per-views held under that name. So that being said, that this show was held in New Orleans, I really enjoyed it, and as much like Backlash 2009, this was another event that I was a fan for. I remember moments from, have seen clips of certain matches, but have never seen the entire event as a whole in its entirety. And of course, as I expected, it was a great show. Had its down moments, had its high moments, and I'm going to be breaking down every single match on the card for you here right now. So kicking off the show, we had a Fatal 4-Way United States Championship matchup between the defending champion Kofi Kingston, MVP, the former champion, William Regal, and Matt Hardy. And the story going into this matchup that William Regal and Matt Hardy were constantly trying to get on the good side of the then Raw general manager, Vicky Guerrero, by beating up Jeff Hardy over in the SmackDown brand. William Regal helped Vicky become the Miss WrestleMania. So they were doing everything they could to get a shot at the United States Championship. MVP had just lost the U.S. title to Kofi Kingston in a great matchup 6 days prior on Raw, was invoking his rematch clause on this show in the Fatal 4-Way along with Regal and Hardy. So it was a very well-wrestled matchup. I remember when this matchup was confirmed just days before the event on WWE.com. So it didn't get the most hype out of all the matches on the show, of course, but they did have a nice build going into this, although it was never confirmed on the show that they would be, or confirmed on Raw that they would be facing each other at the pay-per-view. So it was a very nice opener. It made for a perfect opener to the show, considering it didn't have the best build or didn't have the best hype for the matchup, but it was very well wrestled, kicked off the show on a very hot note. Everyone worked well together, and it wasn't one of your typical Fatal 4-Ways or triple threats where there's two people in the ring at the same time. This was mass chaotic action at all points on the matchup, and it just wasn't a big clusterfuck either. It was very nice action. They meshed well together the styles of all four competitors. They kept the action going. They kept it consistent. They kept it entertaining. And in the end, in a beautiful spot, William Regal, I think, bounced Kofi Kingston off the rope, reversed into a Trouble in Paradise for the victory. So Kofi Kingston remained the U.S. champion here in his first successful title defense of his very long and successful reign as U.S. champion. Now, one thing that I do remember from this point in time, and I should have said this at the start of the video, but I don't know, as of late, I've really had this fascination with 2009 in WWE, and it wasn't even that great of a year. I've just been going back and watching pay-per-views and clips and matches from that year, hence why I watched Backlash. They also had the best pay-per-view themes, too. The theme for the show, Year Going Down by Sick Puppies, was amazing. One of the best pay-per-view themes that WWE's ever done in the last 5-6 years or so. So that was great. But I don't know, I just had this fascination with the year 09 in WWE, and this was one of those shows that really stuck out in my mind. But Kofi Kingston in particular, you talk about the lack of prestige for the U.S. Championship nowadays and all that kind of shit, which is true. But 5 years ago, when Kofi Kingston was U.S. champion, it was phenomenal. He was defending the title maybe every 2 weeks or so on Monday Night Raw against all comers in Fatal 4-Ways, six-pack challenges, Fatal 4-Ways, triple threats, singles matches. You name it, he defended the title in that kind of matchup. It was great. Every single matchup, he defended his championship in every 2 weeks or so on Raw. So unlike Dean Ambrose, it's the exact opposite. He was defending the title almost every single week. So this is a great start to his reign as the United States champion. Up next, we had a no-holds-barred match for the Intercontinental Championship between Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio. Now, one of the highlights of 2009 was the feud between Jericho and Mysterio. They had a very good feud going. It had a story behind it. They had great matches, some of the best of the year. And Jericho coming down to the ring, through the crowd, cutting a promo on the crowd and saying, "Don't touch me." Every time one of the audience members tried to touch Jericho as making his way down to the ring was hilarious. A great way to get extra heat on Jericho before the matchup. And Jericho, like Edge, was one of the most phenomenal heels that WWE had ever produced during this period of time. Because he wasn't a cool heel, he wasn't looking for cheers. He would do anything to get boos, try to garner a negative reaction out of the audience and not try to get cheered and act cool and whatever. He would do anything to get booed, to the point where he told WWE's merchandise department, "Don't make a t-shirt for me. I don't want people wearing my stuff." Because, I mean, he might have cost himself a few bucks here and there, but it made people not want to like him. So it was brilliant by Jericho. I mean, I was still a fan of Jericho anyway. I was still a Jerichoholic when he was still a heel, because he was so great in that role. And he's good as a face, too, don't get me wrong. He's a great face, but he was just a phenomenal heel during this time. And this feud with Rey Mysterio was no different. As was the same with this matchup. They had great matches at Judgment Day, on SmackDown, on Raw, at the Bash, which I thought was their best, but this was also a very, very good matchup. The only real problem with it was that the feud had just started no more than a month earlier, so they really didn't have that much time to build to a no-holds-barred match, which should be the blow-off to a feud, and this was just kind of right in the middle. And they didn't really make full use of the no-holds-barred stipulation. They used a chair at the end, I believe, with Jericho. They used that in the final few minutes of the matchup. But aside from that, when Jericho went out to the ring to grab the chair, I completely forgot it was a no-holds-barred match because they were doing all this great stuff in the ring. And it was a great matchup, don't get me wrong. But the no-holds-barred stipulation was kind of pointless. I mean, it had this matchup taken place in the year 2014, they wouldn't have given it a stip because this year's Extreme Rules pay-per-view in like 2012 and 2013, there's a lot of matches that don't have extreme stipulations, despite the name of the pay-per-view being Extreme Rules. But nevertheless, though, a great matchup. Jericho went over after he went for Rey Mysterio went for the 619. Jericho pulled the mask off of Rey Mysterio, blinding him. Had his hands over his face, trying to hide his face. Jericho rolled him up for the pin. New Intercontinental Champion and a 9-time IC Champion at that. So a great win, great feud, and a great way to continue that feud going into the Bash next, just a couple weeks later. So up next, we had CM Punk versus Rey Mysterio in a strap matchup. I don't know if this is just me or if this is a universal thing, but I hate strap matches. They're one of the most boring stipulations to watch. I saw this strap matchup, Chad versus JTG. What else? We had a strap matchup last year between, Sheamus and Mark Henry. All of these matches, they weren't terrible, but they were very, very boring. Just the idea of being strapped to one another and just touching all four turnbuckles, I always thought was stupid. But they made the most of it here. Both Umaga and Punk were very good workers, or are very good workers, Punk in Punk's case, R.I.P. Umaga. But they had a decent feud going. It was something for Punk to do. I mean, he had cashed in, or attempted to cash in, his Money in the Bank briefcase. And at this time, he was Mr. Money in the Bank. So he had tried to cash in the briefcase a few times over on SmackDown, and Umaga had prevented him from doing so. And in beating Umaga, that now allowed him to go cash in. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Umaga was a big roadblock preventing CM Punk from becoming World Heavyweight Champion. So that was kind of the whole point of this feud. They had good matches. They had a decent matchup at Judgment Day with Umaga going over clean. So it only made sense for Punk to go over here. So Punk did go over here. And I thought it was interesting. The crowd wasn't really behind CM Punk. And at one point in the matchup, or actually throughout the night, I should actually mention this, there was one section of the crowd in kind of like the left-hand side of the front row that was complete smarks the entire time, just chanted for all the heels. They chanted for Umaga, they chanted for William Regal or Matt Hardy, they chanted for Jericho earlier on. It was hilarious. But they chanted for Umaga here because I guess CM Punk had... Now, I wasn't really a fan of CM Punk during his fan favorite years when he was still a face. I mean, I liked him, but he wasn't one of my favorites. And I'm not going to say I started liking him during the Pipe Bomb era, like a lot of people have, but I personally started liking CM Punk in the summer of 2010, so right in between 2009 and 2011. But he was kind of stale and stagnant as a face. I mean, he was a great worker, but his character was really dying down, so a lot of people didn't really care for him at this point. He didn't get a great reaction when he came out, and I'll get to his cash in a little later on in the night. But here, a lot of people, I mean, they were happy to see him win, but there were some people that didn't really care, or kind of booed. Mostly the male audience members, but nevertheless, though, a good win for CM Punk. And if I remember correctly, from what I read maybe around the time or a short time afterwards, Umaga was originally intended to win this match. He was supposed to win this matchup originally. And, CM Punk or Mr. McMahon has this fetish for having the Money in the Bank winners always lose every single one of their matches going into their inevitable cash-in. So Punk was one of the rare people and the rare occurrence that he won a match before he cashed in. So in CM Punk's case, that was awesome. But I think Umaga was supposed to go over here, and I don't know why. I think Punk should have won this feud. Unless he and Umaga were going to feud over the title, and I don't think that was in the plans because Hardy went on to feud with Jeff Hardy. Or I'm sorry, CM Punk went on to feud with Jeff Hardy going into the Bash pay-per-view over the World Heavyweight Championship. So I don't know what the point of that would have been, because the next day Umaga was released, because I guess he failed or refused to go to rehab for some issue that he had and was going to, he violated the wellness policy and stuff like that. So it was kind of dumb. I always hated that Umaga was released without being properly written off the storylines. But nevertheless, that was a decent matchup from Punk and Umaga, and a matchup that I don't really like in the stipulation, but they made the most of it. So that's all that matters. So up next, we had Tommy Dreamer versus Christian versus Jack Swagger in a triple threat Extreme Rules match. So no holds barred, Extreme Rules, kind of the same thing in WWE's mind. Extreme Rules is different from no holds barred because in Extreme Rules you can take all the weapons from underneath the ring, and no holds barred is different, I guess. I don't know. So in this matchup, it was for the ECW Championship. Christian was the defending champion after winning the championship in the previous video that I mentioned before, Backlash of 2009. Tommy Dreamer had said going up to this point that had he not won the ECW title on this show, he would have left WWE. So they had a very good storyline going into this matchup, and a lot of people like to poop all over ECW, the rebooted version of ECW. And as crappy and as watered down as it was, compared to the original ECW, it was a nice third brand. They had some good wrestling. This matchup was it was very representative of that. It was a prime example of how good the wrestling on ECW could be given the right workers. Swagger, say what you will about him, but his run on ECW was great in my opinion. Everything after that was shit, and is shit to this day. But he was great on ECW, very good worker. He had a good feud here with Christian and Dreamer. They worked a very nice matchup, worked in a lot of awesome and extreme spots. Dreamer in the end hit the DDT. The finish kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. They didn't really build to it all that well, but even still, Tommy Dreamer hit the DDT on Swagger, pinned him for the win, new ECW champion, got a nice pop from it, celebrated with the crowd shortly thereafterwards in the front row, then broke through the barricade at the end where the stage is and walked into the crowd and celebrated with the ECW championship win there. So that was very, very cool. As a huge fan of Tommy Dreamer, I had met him only a few months before this, the first wrestler I ever met. Just seeing that go down was awesome for me. I was very happy to see him stay. Granted, he left the company about 6 months later, but at least he got an ECW championship win in WWE before he retired for good from WWE. So I thought that was great. So a very nice match from the ECW brand. And a lot of people like, oh, ECW brand was shit. It was garbage. Yes, it was compared to the original ECW, but take it in as a third brand. You wipe away those ECW letters and you put in maybe NXT or whatever else. It was a very good show for wrestling wise. It was a very good show, and they had good storylines like this one here with Tommy Dreamer. Up next, we had Santina Marella taking on Vicky Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero in a handicap hog pen match. What the fuck is that? This whole storyline was a complete train wreck. I said in my Backlash video that the whole thing with Santina was the down point of the show, the lowest point of the show on Backlash. And it was here too. It was a complete waste of fucking time. But like I said in my Backlash review, Santina could be entertaining in small spurts, and Santina really took this gimmick to heart. He was dedicated to it, so you got to respect him for that. If anyone gave me this kind of shit, I would not go through with it. But then again, if I was getting a paycheck, then maybe I would. I don't know. But Santino made the most of it. He made it funny at times. It was a complete eye roller and a complete groaner and moaner of a matchup. The matchup was stupid. And I mean, Chavo's involvement in this ruined his entire legacy up to this point. But it was terrible. I mean, I'll just say that. If you're going to watch this pay-per-view, just skip right through it. It was maybe a few minutes long. It was a complete waste of time. Santino won. The hog pen thing was just dumb, and thank God it hasn't been repeated since. But and Santina got fired from Raw a couple weeks later, so thankfully that whole storyline had run its course and was over with. And I thought that was funny too when he was fired by Donald Trump. I thought that was hysterical. And it had its moments. I mean, overall the storyline was stupid, but they had its moments, and Santino made the most of it. So this is a complete throwaway matchup. Skip it if you watch this show, but it was okay. It wasn't like, it didn't want to make me bang my head into a wall. It wasn't that bad. It was comical at times, just merely because of Santino. But one thing I did notice from this matchup was just how much weight Vicky had lost from then to now, from 5 years later. She looks great now compared to what she did 5 years ago. Same with Big Show, too. They build him in as like almost 500 pounds at Extreme Rules on the show. In 2009, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I mean, now he looks a lot better than he did 5 years ago. But after this segment, we had Vicky Guerrero backstage. I don't know if it was directly after this or a little later on, but I might as well mention it now. Vicky was backstage. Edge, the World Heavyweight Champion at the time, confronted her, saying, I need my backup for my match. And Vicky was like, where were you for my match? And where were you when I needed you? He said, well, it doesn't really matter. I need backup, so give it to me. And she said, no, you didn't help me, so I'm not going to help you. And she started crying, and she's like, well, you've used me this entire time. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. It's been 2 years, and you finally figured that fucking out. But Edge was like, okay, fine, this marriage is a sham, so I'll take care of Jeff Hardy tonight, and then I'll take care of you. And then they did divorce, I think, the next night on Raw. But then Vicky Guerrero was written out of storylines for like 3 months or so, and then she came back with Eric Escobar, of all people, on SmackDown. I remember that. It was great. But, yeah, there was that. So that was nice storytelling backstage and kind of set the stage for the main event, ensuring that there would not be any interference. Because there was the month prior, remember, at Judgment Day, Matt Hardy interfered through the crowd, and came through the crowd and helped Edge win retain the World Heavyweight Championship by attacking his brother Jeff Hardy. So on the show, no interference in the world title match. But before all that, we had the 3 main event matches. Batista versus Randy Orton for the WWE title. A feud that I liked. I know a lot of people didn't want to see it this year, and that's understandable because it's 5 years later and it's run its course, and both were going to be heels going into WrestleMania 30. I understand that. But in 2009, I thought it was a very good feud. They had good storytelling. Randy Orton took out Batista at the end of 2008 by punching him in the head. Batista comes back, fights for the WWE title, wins it in this matchup. And the whole controversy surrounding this matchup, it was a good matchup while it lasted. They had some good spots. No interference from Legacy, from what I remember. But what the real problem was with this matchup was that it was only 8 fucking minutes long. Why it was 8 minutes, I have no idea. I guess they had time constraints and stuff like that. But and that's fine if it was going to be a WrestleMania or something. But then why waste time on the fucking hog pen match and then waste 20 minutes of all things, and I'll get to this in a minute, on John Cena versus The Big Show? I thought that was a giant waste, no pun intended. That matchup was boring as fuck, so I have no idea why they wasted so much time on that match and gave only the WWE title, the premier prize in the business, only 7 minutes on the show for a good feud. I thought it was a good feud, and the whole point of it was kind of pointless in the end because Batista ended up getting injured in this matchup, I guess. He didn't look injured. I was looking for it because I remember he did get injured at some point. I remember hearing he was injured in this matchup. He looked fine at the end of the matchup, so I don't know what the issue was. But he hurt his arm or something, and then Batista had to take him off TV, or Legacy as a whole had to take Batista off TV the following night on Raw. So he had to vacate the championship, so that was pointless. So Orton losing the championship and then only to win it back a few weeks later, what I thought was really dumb. But either way, though, I thought this was a good matchup. So up next, we had John Cena versus The Big Show in a submission matchup. We have seen these two fight so many times before, and this is even before their 2012 rivalry over on Raw. So that was, when that happened, I was so fucking pissed because Big Show had been annoying after that point to turn him heel again for like the 25th time. And I did do the count. I did make a count of how many times Big Show has turned over the course of his career. It's at least 25 times. Not even fucking kidding you. I thought it was hilarious. But this feud, it was a complete... They had dragged this on from before WrestleMania to June at Extreme Rules. And they even dragged it on after this, too. To the end of this month. Because this pay-per-view was at the start of June. And they did a blow-off match to this feud a couple weeks later on Raw. So why they kept on going back to this matchup, why Vince McMahon gets a boner for John Cena versus The Big Show, I'll never know. Because they've done it so many freaking times, and it never is any better. They try their hardest. I give them that. They're not terrible workers. John Cena can have a great matchup with anyone that he's put in the ring with. CM Punk, Cesaro, even Randy Orton he's had great matches with. Big Show's not so much. John Cena's worst opponent, to me, in my eyes, was always The Big Show. And I watched WrestleMania 20. Go back and watch it. I praised that opening matchup. He had a very good matchup with The Big Show at WrestleMania 20, but that was 5 years prior. Big Show did not look well here. He looked like complete shit. Like I said before, they build him in as nearly 500 pounds. Whether that's accurate or not is beyond me. But he looks in much better shape nowadays than he did 5 years ago. And this was after he took that little hiatus from the WWE. So, and he looked even worse before here, but I don't know, maybe that played a factor. But they had a submission match of all things, which can be boring. And even if you put two of the greatest submission specialists in this kind of matchup, it might not be the most exciting. So you put Big Show and John Cena in there, it's not going to be the greatest matchup, and it wasn't. Like I said, it dragged on for 20 minutes of all things. And maybe it was because I was riding off a few hours of sleep when I watched this show, but I was bored out of my mind when I watched this matchup. The final minute or so was entertaining with John Cena trying to get the STF on Big Show, and that was the whole point of this feud. Because John Cena, after being thrown through a fucking light, one of the lights on the stage at Backlash, a devastating injury, which would have killed anyone else, but because John Cena is Superman, he came back from the injury and beat Big Show 3 weeks later at Judgment Day. It's not even like he beat Orton or even The Miz. like a normal-sized person. He beat a giant while handicapped at Judgment Day clean. And 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, he beat Big Show again via submission. So the whole story here was that he couldn't lock in the STF on the Big Show. And he did by using the rope, so technically he didn't do what he promised he would. He did in a way, but he technically didn't, but whatever. So I thought that was unique, but aside from that, this matchup was a complete waste of time. John Cena didn't really gain anything. He was already the face of the company, the Superman of the WWE. So that was a complete waste of time. The matchup was boring. Big Show went nowhere after this, and neither did John Cena. He went on to feud with the title for the championship going into the summer, so this whole feud was complete filler for Cena before he could re-enter the title picture, so was completely bored by this matchup and did not serve a purpose at all. So then came the main event between Edge and Jeff Hardy for the World Heavyweight Championship in a ladder matchup. And I was very happy that WWE played up the fact going into this bout that they had history in a ladder environment, going back to their original ladder matches and TLC matches at WrestleMania, the SummerSlam from 1999 and 2000, 2001. So they did a great job of playing up the history between these two and even mentioning the fact that Hardy had pinned Edge to win his first WWE title at Armageddon 08. So I thought that was great too. So the matchup itself was one of the best of 09 in my opinion. They had worked in some great spots. Edge trying to spear Jeff Hardy off the ladder again like he did at WrestleMania 21. And then this time instead, Jeff Hardy reversing into a twist of fate. That was awesome when they both fell off the ladder at ringside and crashed right through that ladder and broke it in half. And I know they're made out of wood, but even still, that was an awesome spot. And then also Jeff Hardy dangling from the title belt. Maybe some people thought he would spear him again, but he pulled his legs down, Edge did, and Hardy came crashing down to the mat. So overall, I thought this was a fantastic matchup, phenomenal stuff from two great workers. Edge and Hardy did not have one of the longest feuds, but they did have history, early on in their career, in the middle of their careers, and at the end of their careers as well. So, and they never really had a long rivalry, like a year-long feud, but they had feuds here and there over the course of their respective careers. So they did a great job they had great matches regardless, whenever they clashed, whether it be in 2000 or 2009, 1999 or 2009, 10 years later. So they always had great matches. This matchup was no exception. Definitely check out this match. If you had to watch one matchup from this show, it has to be the main event. Great stuff. Hardy goes over after slipping Edge through the rungs of the ladder. And it was kind of similar to when Jericho was stuck in the ladder at WrestleMania 24 in the Money in the Bank ladder match. But that was only one leg, and then Edge was kind of, his whole body was through the ladder. But I don't know, it was different in a way. But it was creative, though. It was unique. Jeff Hardy finally won. The crowd popped big for him. And Jeff Hardy was one of the most popular, if not the most popular babyface in WWE in 08 and 09. He was huge, and it was great over on the SmackDown brand. WWE had underutilized him over on Raw for a number of years. So to bring him over to the SmackDown brand in 08, I thought was fantastic. Tremendous job of pushing him towards the main event and building up his title chase. And then to win his second world title here was great. JR was in the ring about to interview Hardy, so I don't know if this was planned or if he didn't know about it or whatever, because he only got 2 words in before CM Punk came down and cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase. So when people heard the music, you see some people marking out, like the Smarks and stuff, the people wearing the Punk shirts, but for the most part, a lot of people were shocked or booing, despite the fact that Punk was supposed to be a babyface. And before this point, he had never really shown any heel tendencies. So he goes into the ring, and I thought this was great, by the way. He goes into the ring, and it had been different from every other cash-in for the most part. So he goes into the ring, cashes in the briefcase, hits a GTS on Hardy, who kicks out at 2, despite being through this hellacious ladder match, kicks out of CM Punk's finisher. CM Punk picks him back up, and then Jeff Hardy rolls him up for an inside cradle. Almost got the 3 count. Very suspenseful moment there. And then CM Punk, looking beside himself, goes for his finisher once again, hits him in the side of the head with a kick from a Gugami kick or whatever he calls it. I'm sorry for botching that. Then hits a GTS for the win. New 2-time World Heavyweight Champion, the Straight Edge Savior, is at this point in time. So I thought that was a great way to close out the show. Nice suspense factor. I mean, like I said before, they kind of built to this moment. A lot of people kind of already saw it coming. I personally thought it would happen at Judgment Day, but it happened here instead. It was a very cool moment. A lot of people didn't see this coming, then some people did because they kind of foreshadowed it on SmackDown. But it was very well done and necessary too, because it was a turning point in the CM Punk character. like I said before, wasn't a huge fan of. I was a fan of his work. I did like CM Punk, but he wasn't one of my favorites because I wasn't really a fan of his whole stagnant, watered down, white meat babyface act that he had going on for a number of years from '06 to '09, and he wasn't really allowed to let his true personality shine through, and he was finally allowed to do that here after this matchup. And he didn't go full-fledged heel after this, but the boos when he cashed in and won the world championship, but he wasn't 100% booed. A lot of people cheered him too, but this was kind of the turning point of the character, and then from this point he really became a full-fledged face or full-fledged heel in his feud with Jeff Hardy over on SmackDown, which I thought was one of the best feuds in years because it was realistic, there was truth to it, they brought in reality to the situation, they referenced that, they had great matches, and this was only the first of many from Punk and Hardy over the summer of 2009. So a great way to go off the show, a great main event. And overall, I really enjoyed the show. Like I said, I'm just partially obsessed with the year of 2009 right now in WWE. I watched Backlash, I watched Extreme Rules, and that's only because Extreme Rules is this Sunday, so I felt it was necessary to go back and watch an Extreme Rules that I hadn't seen in its entirety yet. I haven't seen 2010 yet. I know I've seen clips of it, like with this show. But I don't really have much intentions to go back and watch that show because that show wasn't really as strong, in my opinion, as this one was. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a great show. 4 championships changed hands, 5 title changes if you count the 2 times of the world title at the end of the show. So very newsworthy show to say the least. Kind of set up a great summer in WWE for the summer of 2009. Go back and check out, if there's one match, like I said before, check out the main event between Hardy and Edge. But overall, CNN show, you can skip that whole 30-minute debacle, which was a complete waste of time. Santina and Chavo and Vicky, that whole shit, skip that. Batista and Orton was good for what it's worth, not really going any way to see, but it was okay. The triple threat for the ECW title was very good, as was Jericho versus Mysterio, as was even the opener for the U.S. Championship. So yeah, overall, great show. Check it out when you can. Really enjoyed watching this back a couple days ago. So, yeah, with Extreme Rules being this Sunday, I might watch 2011 or 2012. I won't review it because I have seen the show was already in their entirety. And I have written reviews, like for 2012 and 2013. I've wrote and done videos on those shows before. You could probably go back in my videos, my WrestleRant videos, and they're already on there from a couple years ago. But, yeah, even still, though, if you have any suggestions for pay-per-views you want me to watch on the WWE Network, and at this point in time, I only watch pay-per-views that are coming up. Like, the next pay-per-view, I think, is Money in the Bank, right? No, Payback is next. But, Payback, the first ever Payback was like a year ago. So, and there's no Payback to really go back and watch that I haven't already seen. So, I might watch ECW One Night Stand. That actually might be the next pay-per-view that I watch and review. But if there's any other pay-per-views you want me to go back and watch, whether it be WWE, WWF, ECW, WCW, suggest it to me on Facebook at Graham Jason Matthews, on Twitter at WrestleRant, or even in the comments below, and I'll be sure to review it in a future video. So with all that being said, guys, always appreciate the support. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. And like I said before, I'll be back soon with another video with a review of a pay-per-view that I watch on the WWE Network. Thanks for watching, guys. This is GSM. Signing out. Till next week, guys.